Hello, brothers and sisters. Have you ever seen the television series called Hoarders? Hoarders. Hoarders. At the time of its premiere in 2009, Hoarders was the most watched series premiere in A&E network history, especially among adults aged 18 to 49, and it tied for the most ever in the adults aged 25 to 54 demographic. The premiere of this television series was watched by 2.5 million viewers, 1.5 million adults aged 18 to 49. A hoarder, Hoarder, is someone who accumulates money or accumulates food or just accumulates more and more stuff, possessions, and they do it in maybe a hidden way or some carefully guarded place in their home or some storage area for preservation, for some future use, or for whatever purpose they may have in their mind. The TV show actually involves people who intervene on the behalf of these hoarders with the help of specialists and especially therapists. These therapists link hoarding to obsessive and compulsive behaviors. The fear of letting go of these possessions or things or money is their obsession. And the hoarding of these unneeded items is the compulsion. And so the TV series depicts the real life struggles and the treatment of these people who suffer from this compulsive hoarding disorder. One episode that I happened to see had a man that said that the problem in his life was not that he had too much stuff, but instead he said the problem was that he had simply run out of room for his stuff. The stuff was not the issue. The space was the issue. Jesus would say something very similar to us. Not only can hoarding be a mental illness, it also can be a spiritual illness. It can be the root of a spiritual problem in our lives. Jesus would tell a very impactful story in Luke chapter 12, the Gospel of Luke chapter 12. It is often called the parable of the rich fool. One from the crowd that was listening to Jesus teaching said to him, Luke chapter 12, verse 13, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But Jesus said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or an arbitrator over you?" And then he said to them, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." Jesus getting again to the heart of the issue, that we can have our identity, we can have our security wrapped up in our possessions. Over the last few days, we have been talking about Jesus' warning in the parable of the soils that the deceitfulness of riches can choke out, like weeds and thorns, can choke out the seeds that Jesus is seeking to plant in our lives. And here, Jesus is saying that in these last days especially, in the counsel given to the church of Laodicea, that we would think that we're increased with goods and in need of nothing, but we really don't sense our need. Jesus tells us also to take heed and beware of covetousness, the last of the 10 commandments, "Thou shalt not covet." And he warns us that we can begin to think that our life consists in the abundance of the things that we possess and own. And as we said yesterday, we can even seek to trust, as the rich young ruler did, trust in those riches instead of trusting in Jesus. Today, where is your identity? Where is your security? Where is your trust? Here in America, we often talk about trying to keep up with the Joneses. Are you trying to do that in your life? Or are your eyes truly on Jesus? Jesus, as he so often did, would speak a parable to drive this point home even further into our hearts. He says, "The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater barns, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. Sounds very much like this hoarder in that TV series. The problem is not that I have too much stuff. The problem is that I've run out of room. Here, this rich man, his crops, fields yielded plentifully. So he tore down his barns just so he could build larger barns to hoard that. But God said to him, You fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? This is a key question for each one of us. As we store up treasures here on earth, Jesus would warn us in verse 21 of Luke chapter 12, So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. God is wanting us to think about all of our possessions, all that we own and all that we are, and to seek to use those to the benefit of others and for the furtherance of his kingdom. And in doing so, we don't lay up treasures for ourselves, hoarding things here on this planet, but instead we lay up our treasures in heaven, and Jesus says we are rich toward God. That is using our resources for the purposes for which God has given us those possessions and given us those resources and given us those monies and riches and wealth, whatever it is we may have. We each, what the Bible calls, are stewards, and we are to faithfully utilize what God has been entrusted to our care, our resources, our money, our possessions, even our time, we could say, our gifts and talents. We are to use all of those things not for our own benefit and purpose, but for God's glory and to serve and bless the people around us. This is how we are rich toward God instead of hoarding and storing up things only for ourselves. It's an interesting thing to also mention here. Jesus says here that your soul is required of you this night, and whose will those things be which you have provided? Interesting to think about each one of us. We don't usually know when our time is up, when we will die in this world. And Jesus would have us think about our possessions. If those of you who are listening to this and are members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you're a member of a conference here in Mount Pisgah Academy Seventh-day Adventist Church. We're members of the Carolina Conference, and it's one of these services that our Trust and Services Department provides is allowing people to pull together their will. What is going to be done with the things that you have after it is all said and done and your time comes and you die? This is a very important ministry that our conference provides, free of charge. In fact, in most conferences, I believe that it is free of charge. It is a service. You can check with your local conference. And if you do not have a will, I want to encourage you to think about this moment right now, this challenge that Jesus is giving us. We don't know when our time will come up. And Jesus is telling us that we need to think ahead. And the great thing about a will is you get to determine where those resources of yours go when you die. And today Jesus is inviting us. We obviously need to take care of the needs of those in our responsibility, those who are dependent upon our care, our children, as they are continuing to grow and mature. We certainly need to take care of our family. But Jesus would also have us think about always the kingdom, and also have us think about the needs of those around us, outside our family. And so Jesus is telling us, instead of hoarding all these things, to beware. Do not allow covetousness to come up into our hearts, and do not believe that our identity is wrapped up and our security is wrapped up in the abundance of the things that we possess. Instead, Jesus has entrusted all these things to our care so that we can use them for his kingdom, so that we can use them to bless the people around us and help to meet their needs. Today, I hope you are taking this counsel, this challenge from Jesus seriously, and that you will allow Jesus access to your heart, to your life, to your possessions. Instead of building bigger barns, may you be rich toward God in his kingdom of grace, using your resources to further his kingdom, using your resources to take care of the needs, obviously of those within your closest sphere of influence, your family, but also to spill over into the needs of those that are around you as well. May this be your experience in mind to the glory of God. May we truly be rich toward God, not laying up for our treasures for ourselves, as Jesus says in this parable, but laying it up in heaven as we use it for the kingdom and to bless others. May this be your experience in mind to the glory of God. In the name of Jesus.